A stranger returned my lost book, but the message inside wasn't written by me. And it knew something I've never told anyone. Asterisk. I first noticed the book on my porch on a quiet Sunday morning, my old, weather-worn journal I'd lost nearly 3 months earlier. I froze in the doorway, the cold air pressing against my skin as if the world itself was holding its breath. I hadn't seen that journal since the day I misplaced it at a small cafe downtown. I'd assumed someone had tossed it out. Who keeps a stranger's forgotten notebook, especially one that looks as unremarkable as mine? But here it was. Neatly placed. Carefully returned. There was no knock, no voice calling out, no figure walking away down the street. Only stillness, and that journal waiting for me like a question. I picked it up, and a strange warmth lingered on the cover, as if someone had been holding it just moments before. My name was written on the first page in my own handwriting, exactly as it had always been. But when I opened to the middle, where I'd left off, something shocked me. There was a new note. A message written in handwriting that wasn't mine. A message signed, with my childhood nickname. A nickname only one person had ever used. Someone who had been gone for years. My breath caught in my throat. I looked up and down the street again, suddenly shaken, suddenly aware of how quiet everything felt, like the world had slipped into a deeper silence. Who brought my journal back? Who knew that name? And how did they know what to write, so it felt exactly like the person I'd lost? The note's final line trembled in my hands. I'm not gone. You just stopped looking. I must have read that line a dozen times, each pass stirring an ache I thought I'd buried years ago. I'm not gone. You just stopped looking. The words felt like they pressed right into my chest, gentle, but painful, the way old memories can still bruise. The nickname scribbled beneath it, Little Finch, pulled me straight back to being 8 years old again, feet dangling off my grandmother's porch swing, listening to her hum old folk songs while I wrote in whatever notebook she handed me. She was the only person who ever called me that. After she passed, the name vanished from my world completely. So how was it here, now, in handwriting that didn't belong to her, or me, or anyone I recognized? I sat on the edge of the couch, the journal open on my knees, trying to ground myself in the moment, the ticking clock, the muted hum of cars outside, the faint smell of the coffee I'd forgotten to drink. But the note pulled me back into that swirling mix of fear, curiosity, and something else, hope? Maybe. But also the fear of hoping at all. I turned the page slowly, half afraid the rest of the journal had been touched too. But no, everything else was exactly as I'd left it, messy thoughts, half-finished stories, tiny reminders to myself. Only that one page had been altered. Whoever wrote it didn't want to take anything. They wanted to add something. They wanted me to find it. I grabbed the journal and walked to the window, staring out onto the quiet street. It was one of those pale mornings where the sky can't decide if it wants to be gray or blue. No suspicious figures, no lingering cars, no one watching. Still, someone had been close enough to place it on my porch. My phone buzzed, jolting me. Unknown number. Just one text. You weren't supposed to lose it. Meet me where it started. My stomach flipped. Where what started? And who was this stranger who knew more about my past than anyone alive? The message, meet me where it started, kept pulsing in my mind like a heartbeat I couldn't quiet. I stared at the text, waiting for another, but the screen stayed stubbornly still. No name, no clue, nothing that explained how they had my number or why they cared about a journal filled with memories I barely shared with anyone. I read the words again, and slowly, a place surfaced in my mind, unwanted but unmistakable. The old Maple and Third Cafe. The last place I remember having the journal. But also, the last place I'd gone with my grandmother before she passed. I hadn't stepped inside since. The idea of returning made something tighten in my chest. That cafe wasn't just a location, it was the final frame of a memory I wasn't ready to replay. But someone knew that. Someone wanted me to confront it. And someone had written my childhood nickname. I shoved on my jacket, journal still clutched in my hand. The morning air bit at my cheeks as I walked to my car, every step feeling too loud, like the ground itself was warning me to slow down. But I couldn't. I needed answers more than I needed comfort. The drive was short but heavy. Streets I used to know well felt unfamiliar, as if the years had stretched them, reshaped them. The cafe came into view, its sign slightly faded, the front windows catching the weak winter light. It looked exactly the same. Which somehow made it worse. Inside, the soft chime of the door jolted me. The place was almost empty, just one barista wiping down the counter and an older man reading a paper in the corner. The air smelled like cinnamon and warm bread, the same way it always had. Nothing about it screamed mystery. Nothing pointed to a stranger waiting for me. Until I saw the table. Our table. The one my grandmother always picked because it got the perfect slice of morning sun. And resting on the center of it was a folded napkin, clean, untouched, placed with intention. My heart thudded. I approached slowly, half expecting someone to emerge from the corner. No one did. Hands shaking slightly, I unfolded the napkin. Another note. Same handwriting. Sit. She left you more than memories. I dropped into the chair, breath unsteady. What did they mean? And how could they speak about her, as if they knew her too? I sat there at the table, the napkin trembling slightly between my fingers. She left you more than memories. The words felt strange, almost intimate, like someone speaking from inside a part of my life they had no right to enter. I looked around the cafe again. The barista didn't seem to be watching me. The older man in the corner hadn't looked up once. No one seemed out of place. No one seemed like they'd slipped a message onto the table in the last few minutes. And yet, someone had. I placed my journal beside the napkin, running my thumb along the worn edges. My grandmother had always insisted stories, real ones, had a way of coming back when you needed them. But this didn't feel comforting. It felt like someone was tugging on the threads of my past, pulling me toward something I wasn't sure I wanted to know. Another text buzzed. Same unknown number. Look under the seat. My pulse jumped. I leaned down, half expecting nothing, half afraid of what I might find. There was a small envelope taped beneath the chair. My hands shook as I peeled it off. The paper was thin, slightly yellowed, like it had been waiting for years. My grandmother used to use envelopes just like this, plain, simple, the kind you'd pick up in a corner shop. I opened it carefully. Inside was a single photograph. It was me. 6 years old, sitting on that exact chair, legs swinging, grinning up at my grandmother, who stood behind me with her hands on my shoulders. The sunlight cut across the table exactly the same way it did now. Someone had written on the back in the same mysterious handwriting. She wanted you to finish what you started. My throat tightened. Finish what? A story? A promise? Something I'd forgotten? I stared at the photograph, trying to remember the day it was taken. A vague warmth flickered, her laugh, the scent of her lavender perfume, the way she always encouraged me to write even when my stories made no sense. But nothing explained why a stranger had it, or why they had returned it now. My phone buzzed again. Turn around. A cold ripple went through me. Slowly, I turned in my seat. And saw someone standing just outside the cafe window. A hood pulled low. Hands in pockets. Still. Waiting. Watching me. For a moment, everything around me seemed to slow, the soft cafe noises fading, the cinnamon-sweet air thinning, my own heartbeat suddenly too loud. The figure outside didn't move. They stood with their shoulders slightly hunched, as if bracing against the cold, but their focus, it was unmistakably on me. I swallowed hard and tore my gaze away long enough to glance at the barista, at the older man with the newspaper. Neither noticed anything. It was as if this moment was mine alone. My fingers hovered over my phone. No new messages. Just that last instruction echoing in my mind, turn around. The hooded figure shifted slightly, not closer, not farther, just enough to show they knew I was looking. Waiting for me to act. I took a slow breath, trying to steady the knots tightening inside me. Something told me they weren't here to hurt me. They could have approached already. Knocked. Spoken. Done anything else. Instead, they left notes, clues, pieces of a puzzle they clearly wanted me to follow. Still, stepping outside felt like stepping toward the edge of a memory I wasn't sure I was ready to face. But I stood anyway. The chair scraped quietly across the floor, the sound cutting through the calm cafe atmosphere. I tucked the photograph and the napkin into my journal and zipped my jacket up to my chin. The moment I pushed open the door, the cold air rushed in like a warning, and the figure stepped back, as if giving me space. For a heartbeat, we just looked at each other through the thin veil of winter light. "Are you the one texting me?" I asked, my voice soft but steady. The figure nodded, barely. Then lifted a hand and pointed down the sidewalk, toward the old row of shops that used to be busy when I was a kid. "Why all the notes?" I asked. "Why my grandmother? Why now?" No answer. Just a slow gesture, "Follow me." They turned and began walking, not fast, but with purpose, almost like they knew I'd follow. And despite every instinct telling me to be careful, I did. Each step tightened the mix of fear and curiosity swirling through me. I didn't know who they were. I didn't know what they wanted. But something deep in my chest whispered that if I didn't go now, I might lose the only chance to understand what my grandmother had left behind. We walked past the bakery, the old bookstore, the florist that had closed years ago. The figure finally stopped in front of a narrow alley I barely remembered. They turned toward me and finally spoke, voice low, steady. "You're not ready for the truth yet. But I promised her I'd guide you." My breath caught. Promised, who? My breath fogged in the cold air as their words settled over me like snowfall, quiet, delicate, but heavy enough to change everything. "You promised her?" I echoed. "My grandmother?" The stranger didn't step closer. Didn't reveal their face. They simply nodded once, as if the answer should have been obvious all along. "But how did you know her?" I pressed, the question slipping out before I could steady myself. "She never mentioned?" "She wasn't allowed to," they interrupted, voice soft but firm. "Not until you were ready." A chill that had nothing to do with winter slid down my spine. Not allowed to? What could that possibly mean? "I don't understand," I whispered, arms wrapping around myself. "Ready for what?" They reached into their coat and pulled out a small, weathered notebook, one that looked older than mine, its corners bent, its cover faded by time. They held it out to me but didn't let go when I reached for it. "She wanted you to have this," they said. "But not before you found your journal again on your own." "My journal?" I frowned. "I lost it." "No," they said gently, "you left it. Because you were avoiding what's inside it." I stiffened. It felt like they were peeling back layers of me I hadn't shared with anyone, not friends, not family, not even myself. "How do you know any of this?" My voice cracked. "How do you know about her, or me?" The stranger finally released the notebook into my hands. It felt oddly warm, almost familiar, like it had been held by someone who cared. "She trusted me with pieces of her life," they said, "and with pieces of yours." I clutched the notebook tighter. Something inside me trembled of fear, yes, but also an aching sort of longing. The kind you feel when someone mentions a person you lost and suddenly the memory feels alive again. She left something unfinished, the stranger said. And it's time you knew. I looked down at the notebook, running my thumb over the faint embossing on the cover. My grandmother's initials. My throat tightened. What's inside? I asked. You'll see, they replied. But not here. I looked up sharply. Why not? Because this isn't where the truth begins, they said softly. You need to see the place she chose for you. The place she said you'd remember, even if you didn't understand why. My heart pounded hard against my ribs. What place? They stepped back into the dim alley, the winter light thinning behind them. Her old house, they said. She knew you'd return one day. I froze. Her house, the one sold after she passed. The one I hadn't stepped inside since. How? I whispered. How could she know? The stranger's voice dropped to barely above a whisper. Because she left something there, with your name on it. The mention of my grandmother's house hit me like a door swinging open inside my chest, one I'd locked years ago and never dared to reopen. That house was sold, I said quietly. It's not even ours anymore. I know, the stranger replied. But what she left wasn't something anyone else would find. Only you. My fingers tightened around the notebook. The cold air wrapped around us like a second silence, heavy and expectant. Why me? I whispered. Why does any of this matter now? The stranger tilted their head, as if weighing how much to say. Because you were the one she trusted, they answered. And because the truth she left behind, it changes everything. My stomach twisted. Part of me wanted to demand answers right here, right now. But there was something in their voice, not threatening, not secretive, just steady. Like they were guiding me through something delicate. Will you come with me? I asked. The stranger hesitated. No. This part, you have to do alone. That loneliness pressed hard for a moment. I thought of the last day in that house, the quietness after she was gone, the dust floating lazily in the afternoon light, the faint smell of her lavender soap fading room by room. I'd walked out with a box of her letters and never looked back. What if I'm not ready? I whispered. You are, they said softly. You wouldn't be here otherwise. A strange warmth bloomed behind the fear. Something almost like courage. The stranger took a step back, into the shadows of the alley. When you get to the house, they said, go to her old writing room. The one with the blue door. Look under the floorboard closest to the window. My breath caught. That room. That window. I used to sit there with her on rainy afternoons, the sound of raindrops tapping the glass while she told me stories about all the things people leave behind. How do you know about that room? I asked, voice thin. They didn't answer. Instead, they stepped farther into the dimness until only their voice remained. She didn't want her story to end without you. And she didn't want yours to begin without the truth. A swirl of emotion tightened my throat, fear, longing, grief, and something else I couldn't name. When I blinked, the stranger was gone. Just the soft echo of their final words lingered in the cold air. Go before the light fades. She said you'd understand it better in daylight. I looked down at the notebook in my hands, her initials pressed into the cover, waiting. And for the first time in years, I turned toward the road that led back to her house. The drive to my grandmother's old house felt longer than it ever had when I was a child. Every street felt stretched, every turn heavier, as if the past were tugging gently at the edges of the present, trying to pull me back into the memories I'd spent years avoiding. When I finally turned onto her old street, my breath caught. The house looked almost exactly the same, a soft yellow paint, white trim around the windows, the crooked wind chime she'd loved still hanging on the porch. The only difference was the new family car in the driveway and a small bicycle lying on its side in the grass. Someone lived here now. Someone who had no idea the house still held something meant for me. I parked across the street and sat for a moment, the notebook resting on my lap. My thumb traced her initials again, feeling a quiet tremor run through my fingers. I didn't know how I was going to explain myself. I didn't know what I would even say. But I stepped out anyway. The afternoon sun spilled across the yard as I walked toward the porch. Before I could knock, the front door opened. A woman in her early 30s, warm-faced and slightly surprised, looked out at me. "Hi, can I help you?" I swallowed. I hope so. I know this is unusual, but my grandmother used to live here. I grew up in this house. There's something she left behind, something hidden. It's important. Her expression softened, not suspicious, just curious. Really? Come in. You're welcome to look. We kept most of the house the way it was. Relief washed through me so quickly my knees felt weak. Stepping inside was like stepping into a memory frozen in warm amber. The creak of the floorboards. The faint scent of old wood and sunlight. The way the staircase curved upward like a familiar hand. And there, down the hallway. The blue door. Her writing room. My breath hitched. That room still has her old shelves, the woman said kindly. We never changed it. It felt wrong too. I nodded, unable to speak. When I put my hand on the doorknob, a soft tremble ran through me. Inside, the room waited exactly as I remembered, soft blue walls, a desk by the window, light spilling across the floor in a familiar, gentle pattern. Dust danced in the beams of sun like tiny glowing memories refusing to settle. I knelt by the window, heart pounding. The floorboard closest to it looked slightly uneven, just barely raised at the corner. With shaking hands, I slipped my fingers beneath it and lifted. Something was hidden underneath. A small tin box. The kind she used to keep her secrets in. And on top of it, a folded piece of paper with my name written in her handwriting. My knees weakened. She wrote to me. And she left it here, waiting. My hands trembled as I lifted the folded note. Even after all these years, I knew her handwriting instantly, the soft loops, the gentle curves, the way she always wrote my name as if she were saying it with love. For a moment, I couldn't bring myself to open it. Just holding it felt like touching her hand again. The owner of the house lingered quietly in the hallway, sensing something sacred was happening. She didn't speak. She didn't intrude. She simply let me breathe. Finally, I unfolded the paper. The words blurred for a moment as my eyes stung. My little Finch. If you're reading this, it means you found the courage I always knew you had. My breath caught. That nickname, hers alone. Seeing it written again felt like a warm embrace from someone who should have been far out of reach. I left this house knowing some truths might be too heavy for you then. You were young. You were grieving. And I didn't want the weight to dim your light. A soft sound escaped me, half a breath, half a sob I didn't want to release. You've always seen the world differently. You feel deeply. And that is your greatest strength. I closed my eyes, remembering her voice, warm, steady, always patient. The next lines made my heart thump hard. There is someone who promised to watch over you when my time was done. Someone who owed me a promise. Someone who knows the parts of our story you never saw. The stranger. The notes. The journal. All of it suddenly seemed woven together in a thread she'd spun long before today. Trust them, even when you're unsure. They carry the truth I couldn't. I swallowed hard, my throat tight. Inside the tin box is the reason I asked them to guide you. a secret I kept until I could no longer hold it alone. My pulse quickened. Secret? What secret could she have possibly hidden from me? My fingers hovered over the tin box. But the letter wasn't finished. Whatever you find, remember this. You were never unloved. You were never alone. And you are braver than you believe. I pressed the letter to my chest, eyes closed, letting the quiet of the room wrap around me. Then slowly, deeply, I opened the tin box. Inside was an old locket, one I'd never seen before. And beneath it, wrapped in soft cloth, was another envelope. On the front was a single line. The truth about your family. My heart stopped. For a long moment, I just stared at the envelope, its edges yellowed with time, its weight far heavier than the small paper should allow. The truth about your family. The words seemed to pulse in the quiet room, echoing through every memory I had ever carried. My hands shook as I slid my thumb beneath the flap and opened it. Inside was a letter, older than the first, written in ink that had begun to fade. The moment I unfolded it, the scent of old paper and lavender drifted upward, and something deep inside me tightened. The letter wasn't from my grandmother. It was from someone else. To my daughter, it began. My breath caught. My grandmother never called me that. Which meant. My pulse quickened as I read on. If this reaches you, it means your mother made a choice she always feared you would hate her for. I froze. My mother? The woman who left when I was 8. The one who never came back. The one I had spent years trying not to resent. I kept reading, my heartbeat thudding in my ears. When you were born, she wasn't ready. She loved you, but life had broken pieces of her she didn't know how to fix. She feared she would fail you. She feared she would repeat the past. My eyes burned, hot and blurry. So she did the only thing she believed would protect you. She asked your grandmother to raise you. I inhaled sharply, the room spinning for a moment. All these years. I believed my mother left. I believed she didn't want me. I believed my grandmother simply stepped in. But the truth was something else entirely. She visited when she could. Quietly. Carefully. Always from a distance. She never stopped loving you. But she couldn't give you the life she wanted for you. My heart cracked in a way I never saw coming. I remembered flashes. A woman who looked familiar in grocery stores. A figure standing across the street at school pickup. A voice once saying my name softly before disappearing into a crowd. I had always assumed they were coincidences. When your grandmother, took you in, I made a promise to your mother. I would tell you when you were ready. Not before. My breath wavered. The person guiding you now is someone your mother trusted. Someone who helped her through the hardest years of her life. My mind raced back to the stranger, the quiet posture, the careful words, the knowledge they had no reason to possess. They weren't following me. They weren't haunting my steps. They were keeping a promise. The last lines of the letter blurred as tears gathered. Your mother never abandoned you. She protected you the only way she knew. And she loved you more fiercely than you ever understood. A sob rose up, trapped and trembling. I pressed the letter to my chest and let the truth settle, painful, healing, heavy, and freeing all at once. I wasn't abandoned. I wasn't forgotten. I had been loved in a way I never saw. And now, I needed to find the person who knew everything. The one who had promised both of them. The stranger. The hallway of the old house felt impossibly quiet as I clutched the letter and the tin box. My mind swirled, mother, grandmother, secrets, promises, and through it all, one thought remained: I needed to see the stranger again. I stepped outside into the fading afternoon light, scanning the street. The chill brushed against my cheeks, but I didn't care. Then I saw them, leaning against a lamppost a few yards down, hood pulled low as before. My steps were slow, deliberate. I needed to be calm, but my heart wouldn't let me. Every memory, every emotion, every unanswered question pressed against my chest. "You knew everything," I said quietly as I reached them. "About my grandmother, my mother, everything." "Who are you?" The stranger straightened slightly and spoke, voice low and measured. "I was entrusted with the pieces they couldn't carry themselves. I promised to guide you, and I've kept that promise." I swallowed hard. Why now? Why me? Why the journal, the notes, the house? They looked at me, eyes steady beneath the hood. Because the time had come. Secrets have weight, and you needed to be ready to carry them, to understand them, to find closure. Your grandmother knew you would. I felt tears prick the edges of my eyes. So all of this was meant to heal me? To help me understand my family? The stranger nodded. Yes. And you have found it. The journal, the letters, the tin box, all pieces of a story waiting for the right moment. A story about love, loss, and the bonds that never break. I pressed my hand to the tin box, feeling the locket inside. I think I finally understand," I whispered. They never left me. They were protecting me in the only ways they could. The stranger stepped back, hands still in their pockets. "Now you know the truth, you can decide what comes next. But always remember, you are the continuation of their story. And they are with you, always." A quiet warmth filled me, wrapping around the ache I had carried for years. The fear, the anger, the longing, it all settled into something gentler, a calm understanding that I had never thought possible. The stranger nodded once more, as if confirming the bond one now felt, then turned and walked slowly away, disappearing down the quiet street. I remained standing, holding the journal, the letter, and the locket, finally feeling the weight of years lift from my shoulders. For the first time in a long time, the past and present felt connected, whole. And in that moment, I realized I was no longer searching. I had found them in memory, in love, and in the quiet truth waiting for me all along. I stood on the street, the stranger gone, but their presence still lingering, like a whisper in the winter air. My hands clutched the journal and the tin box as if they were lifelines connecting me to everything I'd lost and everything I was only now beginning to understand. I opened the locket. Inside was a tiny photo of my grandmother holding me as a baby, her eyes bright and smiling, and another photo tucked behind it, my mother, standing in a sunlit garden I vaguely remembered from a childhood memory. They were together in that small space, the image of their love and sacrifice pressed into metal and glass, a tangible proof of what words had failed to express. Tears slid down my cheeks, warm and unexpected, carrying years of grief, anger, and longing with them. I pressed the locket to my heart, letting myself finally feel the connection I had thought was lost forever. The notebook in my hands felt heavier now, not with secrets, but with meaning. Every note, every page, every scribbled memory was part of a story larger than mine alone. My grandmother and my mother had been trying to teach me something that I couldn't understand as a child, but now, standing here, the message was clear: love endures, even when hidden, care persists, even when silent, and family binds us, even when apart. I sat on the curb outside the house, watching the last light fade across the blue door. The snow had begun to fall lightly, dusting the sidewalk and garden with a delicate silence. In that quiet, I could almost hear my grandmother's voice, soft and certain: "You were never alone." And beneath it, a softer echo that could only be my mother's: "You were always loved." All my questions, the why, the how, the when, began to settle, not with complete answers, but with enough understanding to soothe the ache I had carried for so long. The stranger had delivered more than my lost journal. They had returned the pieces of my life I didn't know I needed, guiding me to the truth that had always been waiting beneath layers of fear and time. I knew I would never forget this day. I would never forget the journal, the notes, the hidden envelope, or the locket. But more than that, I would never forget the quiet, invisible presence of love, the kind that waits patiently, unseen, for the right moment to reveal itself. And as the snow thickened around me, covering the world in white and quiet, I made a silent promise to carry this love forward, to honor the sacrifices of those who came before me, and to never let the weight of the past eclipse the light of connection. For the first time in years, I felt free. The story they had left me was no longer a mystery, a burden, or a puzzle. It was a gift, one I would carry with me for the rest of my life. The snow had settled around the house, covering the garden in soft white, and the quiet seemed to hold every memory I had ever carried. I sat on the porch steps, journal in my lap, the tin box beside me, and the locket pressed lightly to my chest. For the first time, I let myself breathe fully, without the weight of questions, without the ache of uncertainty pressing against my ribs. I thought about the stranger who had guided me here, who had honored a promise made long before I could understand it. I would never know their name, their story, or why they had chosen to help me, but I didn't need to. Their purpose had been clear: to give me the chance to understand the love and sacrifice that had shaped my life from the very beginning. I unfolded the last letter from my grandmother once more, letting her words soak in. You were never alone. You were always loved. For years, I had misunderstood absence, pain, and distance. Now I saw them for what they truly were: protection, devotion, and quiet courage. My mother's love, my grandmother's wisdom, and the stranger's careful guidance had all converged in this moment to heal what I had carried silently for far too long. I held the journal open, rereading some of my childhood notes. Each word, each scribble, felt like a thread connecting me to the past, the present, and the future. I realized then that our stories, hidden, lost, and sometimes painful, are never truly gone. They live in the memories we carry, in the gestures of those who protect us, and in the quiet truths we eventually find. The tin box, the locket, the letters, the journal, they were not just objects. They were anchors, reminders that love endures beyond absence, beyond misunderstanding, beyond time itself. I stood, brushing the snow from my sleeves, feeling the first warmth of realization settle inside me. I had found the truth, and with it, a sense of peace I hadn't known was possible. The sun dipped low, casting the house in golden light, and I whispered a quiet thank you to my grandmother, to my mother, to the stranger, and to the life that had led me here. I see you. I understand you. I will carry you with me. And as I walked back down the path toward the street, the journal tucked under my arm, the locket warm in my hand, I felt the world shift slightly, not because it had changed, but because I had finally learned to see it with love and clarity. For anyone listening, remember this: some truths take time to reveal, some love takes patience, and sometimes, the people we think are gone never really leave us. They wait, quietly, for the moment we're ready. And when that moment comes, you'll know it.